What is going on, everybody? What is going on? The Catch fam, my name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we are hopping into another 2023 fantasy football mock draft. For today's video, we've got a 10-team mock draft, full PPR, one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, a tight end spot, one flex spot, kicker and defense, and 5 bench spots. As it is mock draft season here at The Catch, if you guys have any mock draft requests, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below, and I'm happy to put together a video just like this one where I give you round by round roster construction advice. But I will tell you, my schedule is filling up very quickly with these mock draft request videos, so make sure you guys get those in. I'm more than happy to make a video for you as long as you guys are subscribed to the channel, which if you're not, I do kindly ask on the way in that you guys hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and if you guys have any other comments, questions, or concerns pertaining to the 2023 fantasy football season, feel free to drop those down below as well. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Without further ado, let's not waste any more time. Let's hop into today's mock draft. All right, so for the purpose of today's video, requested that I draft from the 1.4, which, isn't really the best spot, in my opinion, to necessarily draft from this year. I kind of prefer a later round selection overall, but I do think looking at the 1.4, there is certainly a lot of hope still. So don't be too upset if you're drafting from the 1.4. It's just kind of an awkward spot. Those two top tier wide receivers and Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are likely to be off of the board. And then, Christian McCaffrey probably going to be gone as well, which is exactly how this draft started. And I think a lot of people kind of have this question, like, do I take Austin Eckler, who was an RB1 last year? Do I go in and take Travis Kelce because he's Travis Kelce? Do I go for one of the top tier wide receivers right here who are available, Tyreek Hill or Cooper Kupp? Or do I go for some upside and do I take a running back who has the potential to have an incredible rookie season in Bijan Robinson? And that is what I have been doing a lot of the time from this position, really regardless of if, you're in a 10-team format, a 12-team format, whatever it may be. I'm going hero running back, going with the hero running back build, taking Bijan as that hero running back, of course. And then throughout rounds 2 and 3, I'm getting my primary wide receiver 1 and my wide receiver 2. So that's exactly how we're going to start today's draft. And, don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of things you can do right there at the 1.4. If you want to start aggressive at wide receiver and go with Tyreek Hill or Kupp right there, I don't have a problem with that. If you want to go in and take Kelce off the board, I don't really have a problem with that either. I do think in 10-team formats, some positional advantage at the tight end position can definitely help you out. But I think ultimately the best pick there, if he is available, is going to be Bijan Robinson. He has been my first round target throughout the entire offseason. And really, depending on your league, your format, all that stuff, he can go anywhere from literally the 1.1 to like the 1.8 or 1.9. It really just depends on who you're drafted with and what format you're playing in. But for me, we're going to go hero running back tonight. We're going to start with Bijan Robinson. And then more than likely, we're just going to go in and take our primary wide receivers with these next two selections. So, Devontae Adams on the board at the moment. If he falls here, you just have to take Devontae Adams. I get that, some people think the ceiling could be capped this year with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback and all of that, but he's just far too good of a talent to pass up, as our wide receiver 1, even if, that offense doesn't look entirely promising, especially with Josh Jacobs still holding out. But there goes Devontae Adams, which, I don't even think he would really be available in most drafts at the 2.7, so I'm kind of happy that happened. But I think we go best available wide receiver here. It's either Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith, in my opinion. Then I'd probably say Chris Olave. But I'm going to go Jalen Waddle because he had a phenomenal year last year. And, obviously finished as the wide receiver 8 in full PPR. And obviously Tyreek Hill being there doesn't impact Jalen Waddle whatsoever. He's still going to garner those targets from Tua. He's still going to be a productive wide receiver, especially in full PPR format. So Jalen Waddle, as he kind of filters into the end of the second round, I think he is an absolute steal. Looking ahead to 3.3, if Devonta Smith is there, we're smashing the draft button. If he falls out, don't think twice about it. And if you want to go Devonta Smith over Jalen Waddle, I think that's perfectly fine. Okay. Chris Olave, a player that I like a lot going into the season. If you compare his rookie stats to Garrett Wilson's rookie stats, if you compare what Derek Carr did last year as a quarterback to what Aaron Rodgers did last year as a quarterback, all those numbers are pretty much the same. Everyone's talking about Garrett Wilson, and I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to have a fantastic year. But at the end of the day, I think Chris Olave is in suit for a very good sophomore year as well and is coming at a much cheaper price. So keep Chris Olave in mind as well. So here at the 3.4, we're going to take Devonta Smith, no doubt about it. But I will say, if Calvin Ridley was there, I think in that circumstance, Devonta Smith is probably off the board if Calvin Ridley does float out there. Excuse me. I like Ridley at the 3.4 right there quite a bit as well. But Devonta Smith, it's kind of interesting landing both Waddle and Devonta Smith in this draft because both of these guys, top 10 wide receivers last year, but they're both kind of the wide receiver B on their teams, right? The wide receiver 2 on their teams with obviously Tyreek Hill on the Dolphins and obviously AJ Brown on the Eagles as well. But where Waddle and Smith, these style wide receivers really get a lot of their fantasy value is just the consistent targets overall and the chemistry that they have with their respective quarterbacks. I think both these guys are in line to finish within the top 15 at worst going into this coming season, barring any injuries. So happy to take both of those guys right there. And that fills in our primary wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 spots. So now moving into the 4.7, 5.4, you're kind of in an interesting spot here, right? Like, do we go ahead and get our RB2 or do we wait a little bit because there's probably similar value floating into later rounds, or at least guys that I like. And when I'm looking at a hero running back style, you know, we're spending high draft capital on our RB1, right? And then after that, like we're kind of playing between, mid-round running backs to the RB dead zone, and we're filtering in that RB2 spot and hoping to get the most potential upside. And that kind of, gives us the advantage to go ahead and take a lot of swings at wide receivers and get that positional advantage at wide receiver throughout the season. And more than likely consider a quarterback early as well. So we'll kind of look at who's available at the running back position. Don't get me wrong, we're still going to take a look. If there's somebody that we like enough, we're not going to pass up the value, but we're going to primarily be looking at the quarterback and wide receiver positions here. I do think in your 10-team formats, when it comes to the tight end position, unless Kelsey or Andrews comes to you at a great value, like Andrews went at 4.2 tonight, that's an incredible value. Kelsey, even at the 1.7 is still a good enough value, right? If you don't get one of those two guys at the right value, maybe Hawkinson at the right value, maybe Kittle, whatever, I think you just hold off at the tight end position and you let a good value tight end come to you. Even if you're going like super late tight end and you're going with Cole Kmet, you're going with Evan Engram or Pat Fryermuth, and then maybe you're drafting two tight ends. You're adding Greg Dulcich or you're adding Dalton Kincaid at the end of your draft as well. I just think when you look at the point differential between like tight end 4 last year and tight end 12, it was almost the exact same point differential between all those guys. So if you're not getting one of those top tier guys, just hold off on tight end, especially in these particular 10-team formats. So Breece Hall sitting here, he's kind of intriguing, kind of interesting with everything going on, but I'm going to go ahead and just take DJ Moore off the board. I love him as a flex option moving into the season. I think the Bears are going to take a step forward offensively. I've been talking about this all off season long. I've been a huge fan of DJ Moore ever since he got traded to the Bears. I think this is a great position for him to be in. I think Justin Fields is going to take a step forward as a quarterback in terms of a passing quarterback. So I'm all in on DJ Moore. I have been all off season. Yes, it was promising to see him take, the screen reception for a touchdown in week 1 of preseason, but I was in on DJ Moore and have loved him as a wide receiver 3 throughout the offseason anyways. Love him right there. I think that's a great selection for us. Now we've got Waddle, Smith, and DJ Moore at the wide receiver position. And now we're kind of in this position, like, do we want to go ahead and take a quarterback? Burrow, Lamar, Fields, Herbert, Lawrence, all on the board. I think we hold off one more round, actually. I think we go ahead and we take our RB2 here, or we go ahead and take a wide receiver 4, which to some of you guys, that might sound a little bit crazy. Like we already have 3 pretty good wide receivers, but in your full PPR formats, especially if you play double flex, today's video is a 1 flex league, but regardless, you want a stud wide receiver that you are able to filter in at the wide receiver 1 and 2 spots if necessary, and at the flex spot throughout the year, whether it's injuries, bye weeks, whatever it may be. You want a 4th guy on your bench that you believe in. It's going to make you much more confident going into the year. So there's a lot of guys that I like right here, but I'm going to reach for today's video because sitting here, at the 1.4, at the 5.4 specifically, I know Christian Kirk's not going to come back to us. Might feel like a little bit of a reach, but I love Christian Kirk. He's another guy I have talked about all off season long who I think is going to have a phenomenal fantasy season, especially in full PPR. There are other options there. I like Drake London a lot. I like Christian Watson a lot. At the time I'm recording this, he caught a 75-yard touchdown against the Patriots and joined practice today. Looks like him and Love have a pretty good connection. Still like Watson. He brings a lot of upside to the table. I don't mind him right there. I really like Brandon Ayuk. Then you've got plenty of veterans there too. D-Hop, McLaurin, Godwin. I think all those guys are okay. I just prefer the upside of some of these younger guys like Kirk, Watson, and Drake London, and even Brandon Ayuk. So, nonetheless, we get our fourth wide receiver. Now, when we look at this team, right, you can look at our bench right now and say, oh, we have one guy that we believe in who brings consistency to the table. Anything happens in terms of injuries to Waddle, Smith, or DJ Moore, or when those bye weeks start to kind of filter in, we're still in a position where we have a wide receiver who we believe in. And, if you're kind of looking at things right there and you think, oh man, I have to go running back, by the fifth round, I have to get my second running back here. Don't panic, because when you look at the available running backs there at the 5.4, Miles Sanders, Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, Alexander Madison, DeAndre Swift, Kamara, and Cam Akers, well, at the end of the day, a lot of those guys in my mind are in very similar tiers. I mean, I kind of like Miles Sanders and Aaron Jones maybe a little bit more, but I think you're still getting a relatively similar RB2 with us waiting to go RB2 at the 6.7 or 7.4. But that brings me to my next point. We kind of held off at quarterback. Joe Burrow still available. And it looks like he's going to fall to us because every team on the board in front of or behind us, I guess I should say, has a quarterback. So we're going to go ahead and take Burrow at the 6.7, which is kind of fortunate, but I can understand with the calf injury. There are enough people in the fantasy community who are a little bit afraid to take him, and that's why we saw Fields, Herbert, T-Law, and even Lamar off the board before Burrow. But, for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to go ahead and take Burrow here as our quarterback one. I don't have a problem with that. If you are, drafting soon within the next week or so, and you're a little bit worried about Burrow's situation, take Burrow at this value because, I mean, at the end of the day, Burrow was a fourth rounder, whatever it may be. He's going now at the end of the sixth round, in today's video, for example. At the end of the day, that's a tremendous value and drop of ADP. When you look at Burrow last year, it's your quarterback 4 in fantasy, quarterback 7 the year before. If you're worried about the situation, take him at his value. And then towards the end of your draft, just take a flyer on another guy. I mean, whether it's, Geno Smith, Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, whoever it may be, Kirk Cousins, just take somebody else, and then that can kind of maybe alleviate some of that fear that you might have of what's going to happen with Joe Burrow. Nonetheless, we get a steal in Joe Burrow there. Now we're going to RB2 at 7.4. So Akers is off the board. We're moving into the 7th round. Who do we like the best here? It's really up to you guys. Don't overthink this one. You're getting your RB2. Bijan's going to be consistent this year. He's going to bring a ton of upside. He can do it all. He's in a great situation. Offense that's going to run the football a ton. And, I will say Brandon Ayuk's on the board here. I love Brandon Ayuk. I do like Hollywood Brown. Chris Godwin is an okay option. Tyler Lockett's an okay option. Mike Williams an okay option. But we really don't need another wide receiver here. So, this might surprise some of you guys, but I'm going to go Rachaad White here. I love him as an RB2. I think he has a ton of upside in full PPR formats. 50 receptions as a rookie. Baker Mayfield, who looks like he's going to win the starting quarterback position. I'm not really worried about Kyle Trask, but there has been some buzz there. Nonetheless, Baker Mayfield checked the football down more than any other quarterback in the NFL last year. That should be good for Rachaad White, who had 50 receptions as a rookie, even with Leonard Fournette being the primary starter for the first half of the season. So, even if it ends up being Kyle Trask, this offense is still going to be playing from behind a lot of the times because I just don't see this team being that great next year. And at the end of the day, Kyle Trask is still going to have to dump the football off as well. So, Rachaad White, in the 7th round here, I think he's a great value, especially in full PPR formats. I'll take him all day long as my RB2. I also like DeAndre Swift in that range. Swift had fell out. I'm a big fan of Swift going into this year as an RB2. I just think there's too much upside there to kind of pass on. But nonetheless, I'm happy with Rachaad White. So now we're in a position where we do want to go ahead and take a look at our RB3 and RB4 with kind of keeping an eye on who else is available. Because if you are playing in full PPR, at the end of the day, even though we already have 4 wide receivers we believe in, you always want to keep an eye on what wide receiver value is on the board. Like, we're moving into the end of the 8th now. Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown are still on the board. You got Mike Evans, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers. A lot of these guys are going to start to go as Hollywood just did, but there's still a lot of good value here. David Montgomery was a guy I was eyeing who goes off the board there at 8.5. So now we just kind of go with the best available running back because things are starting to kind of thin out in terms of available running backs. So Dalvin Cook, Javonte Williams, James Cook, A.J. Dillon. There's a couple names here. Then Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson as well. So for me, I don't really mind who you prefer here. Just take a note. Like, I think you should go running back right here. I'll go James Cook. We'll kind of go with the same idea of another sophomore running back who brings some upside to the table in the passing game in James Cook. So don't get me wrong, between Bijan, Rashad White, and James Cook, we're definitely banking on a lot of potential here. But I think all these guys are definitely in situations where they can benefit from their respective situations. James Cook, when you look at his situation, yeah, I do actually like Damian Harris as a late round running back selection, but Cook is the running back here who brings upside in the passing game, similar to how we just talked about Rashad White bringing upside in the passing game. I think James Cook within this offense, there are enough people out there who eye him in terms of a later round selection who does bring that upside and could potentially have a breakout season. So I do like Cook as a RB3 in this range. But like I said, I do prefer David Montgomery or James Conner. And part of me kind of likes Dalvin Cook, but part of me is kind of hesitant on Dalvin Cook as well. Nonetheless, just take the best available running back in your eyes right there. Moving on to the 9.4, with Zay Flowers off the board, who's kind of like my favorite wide receiver 5 target. I'm just going to go ahead and lock up another running back. And once again, whoever you prefer out of this range, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson, take them off the board. They're all fine to me. I'm going to go Antonio Gibson. Just kind of the theme of this team so far at the running back position. We're just going for upside in the passing game. I think Antonio Gibson is the running back on the Commanders who brings that to the table. In terms of a redraft one flex format, 4 running backs is okay to me. If you weren't like super confident in this running back room, you could go with the 5th and then finish out with just 5 wide receivers. But I prefer to have 6 wide receivers, 4 running backs, a quarterback, and tight end. So that's what we're going to go for here. But if we get the right value on like a Zach Charbonnet, Devon A. Shane, Jerick McKinnon, those are kind of the late round running backs that I like and that I'm willing to add to a roster if I feel like their value outweighs, a wide receiver on the board per se. But speaking of wide receivers, that's what we're going to take a look at moving into the 10th and the 11th round. So for me, you got to start considering at least one rookie wide receiver. I've been talking about this a lot lately. When you look at the trend in fantasy football, the trend in the NFL over the past couple years, rookie wide receivers produce in their rookie season. They make for great flex options, great values towards the end of your draft. So I'm not entirely sure if Quentin Johnston's going to fall out to us, but I do think he's a good enough option to consider as our wide receiver 5. Outside of that, I like Cortland Sutton. Yeah, I get it. The Broncos looked really bad in week 1 of preseason already, but ultimately, I do think this team will still improve under head coach Sean Payton. And, Sutton had a really low ceiling last year, but full PPR, double digits every game he was healthy, except for 4 of them. At least worst case scenarios like a wide receiver 5. You know what you're going to get. Probably about 11 to 14 fantasy points, 14 on a good day, closer to 11 on a not so good day. And I think at the end of the day, that's okay at this range in the draft. And like I said, if you believe in this Broncos team, well, then I think that Cortland Sutton should improve just as much as Russell Wilson or Jerry Jeudy or whoever else you like on that offense. But nonetheless, he's a target for me in this range, and I love Sky Moore as well. And Sky Moore is such a weird ADP. He could go at any point in your draft. I mean, him and Zay Flowers are the 2 wide receivers I've been talking about whose ADP is not really true right now. They're just kind of going all over the place because so many fantasy managers like them. So I do like him in this round as well. And, we mentioned tight end earlier. I think we can continue to hold off at tight end. I mean, when we look at the board right now, there's just one other team that does not have a tight end, and we still have Pat Fryermuth and Njoku and Komet available, so I'm not panicking just yet. I think we go with the best available wide receiver here. You could go Fryermuth, but I think we go in and we take our wide receiver, and I'll go ahead and take Cortland Sutton, and yeah, especially because Sky Moore just got selected, so we'll take Cortland Sutton. I think he's fine as a wide receiver 5. We're going to miss out on Sky Moore. I had a feeling that was going to happen. I know that my community and the people that I draft with are pretty high on him, so would have been a good value for us, but I'm fine with Sutton right there. And then now, moving into the 11.4, we kind of have 2 options. Do we want to go in and take our tight end? Like maybe there's a player right here you prefer that you don't want to see go to another team between Fryermuth and Njoku and Komet, but for me, if Komet falls out to us the next round, I'm completely okay with that. He was your tight end 7 last year. Already talked about how I like the Bears offense going into this year. I'm still fine with Komet. even with DJ Moore being added to this offense, and I don't have a problem double dipping into this offense with both DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, I do think they're going to be productive enough. So the two things we could do here is, go ahead and take that tight end that we want. We could go with another running back, make this a 5 RB build, 5 wide receiver build. And actually, the third thing I should say we could do, is we could take one more wide receiver here. So it's kind of up to you, however you prefer. I think any option is fine, but let's go ahead and make it a 5-5-1-1 build. Let's take Jerick McKinnon here. Once again, the running back in his respective offense who brings that pass catching upside to his respective team. So we'll take McKinnon off of the board and we will move along, go ahead and snag our tight end in the 12th round. I'm hoping for Cole Kmet, but we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, Freiermuth and Joku Kmet all still sitting here. There's only one team on the board who does not have a tight end other than us. So I think we're still going to get good value at tight end. Then we'll snag a kicker in defense and we'll call this mock draft a day. All right. So as the 11th round wraps up there, we move into the 12th round. One player I do want to mention who you could have taken over Jerick McKinnon in this build if you wanted 6 wide receivers, 4 running backs instead of a 5-5 build is Romeo Doubs. He's a player in this range that I absolutely love. Christian Watson is a receiver, brings upside to the table. He's going to have a good year. He's a wide receiver you want to target early, of course, in your drafts. But Romeo Doubs, already showing that chemistry that we've heard about with quarterback Jordan Love in the preseason, catching a touchdown against the Bengals and a pretty contested catch as well. And overall, throughout training camp, we've heard that Jordan Love really likes Romeo Doubs. They have a good chemistry. I think that's going to bleed into the season. I mean, Watson was extremely flashy, made a ton of incredible plays last year, but Romeo Doubs, when healthy, still looked pretty good as well. So, we've got 2 sophomore wide receivers for the Green Bay Packers, a quarterback in his first starting year. Those are going to be the 2 primary targets for Jordan Love, and I think that Doubs brings a lot of PPR appeal. He's just going to be that kind of security blanket. If Love doesn't get his first read, he's going to look for Doubs, and I think that he's going to have a very productive year as long as he can stay healthy. So in this range, if you wanted a 6 wide receiver over that 5th running back in Jerick McKinnon, I do think Romeo Doubs is just fine as well. Nonetheless, we land Cole Kmet at tight end. We got a little bit of a run at the tight end position there right before we selected him. Got a little nervous, but Kincaid, Freiermuth, and Joku and Kmet all off the board. So we kind of went true late round tight end. We're probably the last team to select a tight end, and I think that it worked out just fine. So there's your team for you. We're just going to go ahead and draft a kicker and defense to wrap this thing up. But here's what you would be looking at, in this format, a 1 flex format with this respective team. Joe Burrow, quarterback. Like I said, if you want to take a second quarterback at the end of your draft, that's fine. If you're worried about the Burrow injury or maybe you're drafting soon, you don't have time to really see what is going to happen towards the end of the month. What's our read on Joe Burrow? And don't get me wrong, there's definitely a likelihood that Burrow misses, the first couple games of the season or 1 or 2 games. So just keep that in mind. So Burrow and Kmet are starters, obviously at quarterback and tight end. Then we would have Bijan and Rashad White as our RB1 and RB2. Jalen Waddle and Devonta Smith as our wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. DJ Moore in the flex. And then on our bench, we got Christian Kirk, James Cook, Antonio Gibson, Cortland Sutton, and Jerick McKinnon. So a pretty solid bench overall. We definitely have options that can kind of filter into that RB2 spot based on matchups, maybe based on injuries. And then we have 2 wide receivers on the bench who can absolutely filter into the flex spot, especially Christian Kirk as well. So like I said, if you wanted to go with a second quarterback over Jerick McKinnon, that's fine. There's definitely enough available players here. If you wanted to go with another wide receiver, I prefer Romeo Doubs right there. So there is some flexibility within today's build as well. But I think overall, a good roster, and I think this hero running back strategy worked out just fine for us. I guess the one note I'll make for you guys is if, you weren't comfortable with Joe Burrow right there and you've kind of missed out on all the other elite quarterbacks, after Trevor Lawrence and Herbert are gone, you could just go ahead and go with the best available running back or even wide receiver there. Maybe you want to go ahead and just take Brandon Ayuk and then we don't take Cortland Sutton in the 10th, because essentially if we did that, then you can just hold off at quarterback completely and get like a Deshaun Watson or Dak Prescott late. So, you could kind of change that pick into a wide receiver or running back and kind of filter out towards the end of your draft where you're going to select a quarterback. But like I said, Burrow at the value right now, I'm going to take him. And if the issue bleeds into the beginning of the season, then well, we'll figure it out then, or we'll just draft a second quarterback if you have that fear right now. So we get the Jets defense. At this point in the draft, in a 10-team draft, don't reach on a defense, don't reach on a kicker. There's going to be somebody that you can stream. The Patriots defense is still available in this draft at the moment, and they were your kick or defense one last year and the defense two the year before that. So don't panic on defense whatsoever. I like the Jets because I think they bring some upside. They're going to have a solid year. And then we're just going to draft a kicker here and just don't overthink it. I mean, we are one of the channels that does care about the kicker and defensive positions. We run must start kickers and must start defenses throughout the season, but ultimately we're always going to tell you don't reach on kickers. Don't be drafting Justin Tucker before you draft your final running back or wide receiver or second quarterback, even whatever it may be. Don't reach on kickers and defenses. Just get those with the last two picks of your draft. Will be just fine. There's our team for the day: Bijan Robinson, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Joe Burrow, Rashad White, James Cook, Antonio Gibson, Cortland Sutton, Jerick McKinnon, Cole Kmet, Jets defense, and Nick Folk at kicker. Ultimately, I think a pretty good build overall. Be sure to let me know in the comments down below what you guys thought of today's draft, of today's team. And like I said at the beginning of the video, as long as you guys are subscribed to the channel, please let me know. If you guys have any mock draft requests, I'm happy to put together a video just like this one where I give you guys round by round roster construction advice. But my schedule for these videos is filling up very quickly. I have limited spots left, so make sure you guys get your requests. And hit the like button on the way out if you guys found today's video helpful or enjoyable or whatever it does for you guys to hit the like. And if you guys have any other comments, questions pertaining to the upcoming fantasy season, please let me know down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And that'll wrap up today's video. With that, I will say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on The Catch.